Astro is known perhaps almost too much for how good it is at content. It can do a lot more than that, but let's focus just on Markdown when it comes to content sites. I want to show you the top things I use when it comes to Markdown within Astro. Let's go ahead and start by just creating a component over here. We're going to call this Markdown component, just so that it's clear what it is, .md. Now, any Markdown here, I can just write like a heading here, and then I'll paste in some lorem ipsum. Now, any component like this, it doesn't have to be inside of a components folder, but I can import this as an Astro component. So Astro will actually componentize Markdown for you, and you can import it directly. But I can import like this, and I just want to grab the content here from, and I can go up relatively to the directory and just grab the Markdown component.md. Now this content here, again, it is a component, so I can just import it, and notice it actually converts it to HTML for me automatically. Now, if you have a lot of these, you may want to like as this thing, so like as Markdown 1 or something like that, so you can actually rename them, and then this would be the component name here. You can drop it in here, but this is a really quick and easy way to import Markdown and use it throughout your site. Now, this obviously means that you've already tried to handle globally your styles for heading and paragraphs and lists and stuff like that. One of my favorite things about Astro is content collections because it gives you type safety for any data, including Markdown. However, you don't have to use it if you want to just do this more simply. So let's say I come over here and I have a folder, we'll call this data, and I'm just going to paste in two files here, post1 and post2. You can see that they are Markdown. They have this front matter section like a lot of Markdown files. Now I can import this directly and use it, for instance, if I want to list off different posts in here. So I can name this whatever I want, but let's call it posts. And I'm just going to do object.values, and I'll use an import function that comes with Vite, which is what's kind of under the hood here, and that is the glob import function. All I have to do is provide a file path here relatively to those files. So I can go up, go to the data, and then just say any Markdown file within here, and I'll make sure that I set this to eager true. I can actually just console log this. Let's jump over here, and you'll notice that I actually get this array that gives me lots of things, including the actual content right here. This is that content component that Astro componentizes for you automatically. But I also get access to the headings, compiled content, the raw content, the URL of the file itself, all the front matter. So I get all this kind of packaged together by default when I use this glob import function. Again, because I'm not using content collections, I can't actually validate that data unless I do a bunch of that myself, but it's still nice to be able to quickly pull this stuff in. What that means is I could come inside here and just loop over those items. So let's have a UL, and in here we'll just take our post.map, and we'll take for each item, here we'll just output an LI tag. And then I can go ahead and just loop through here. If I jump over, you'll remember I have this front matter. I can grab the front matter.title and just loop over each of those items. And now notice I have post1 and post2. Again, I don't have type safety here. That's why TypeScript is upset at me, but I do actually get all that data directly in here. Now, you may have remembered that I have this URL as well. So let's go ahead and switch that out just to see what it looks like. So if I come over here and change this to URL, you'll notice I get nothing. Now, the reason for that is that these posts are not inside my pages directory. So Astro does not create routes for them automatically. I could change that if I want to. In fact, let's just call this something like posts, and I'm going to drag this and put it inside my pages directory, which now will mean that I also get access to the URL because it's inside the pages directory. So Astro is going to automatically create it as a route. Now, obviously I need to change this around as well. So we'll come into posts right here, and it's in the same directory. And now I should be able to get the URL, and notice it says posts page 1 or posts page 2. So we can actually grab this here, and let's just add it directly inside here. And now I can go ahead and click into post 1 or post 2, and it will actually show me that post. Now you'll see here it's not using my styling from my site, and that's because by default these Markdown routes aren't actually wrapped with anything. You'll notice if I come to my index here, I'm wrapping everything in a base layout, but I'm not doing that over here because it's a simple Markdown file. However, Astro gives me the ability to add something called a layout like this, and then I can just relatively reference any wrapper component I want, and it will simply drop it in the slot available. In Astro, you have these slots right here. Notice I've got one set right here. So if I reference the base layout, it should actually automatically wrap this for me. So I'm going to go up one level, up another level into layouts, then into base layout.astro. And notice as soon as I save it, it actually drops it directly in here. Now this obviously leaves a little bit of styling to be desired the way I set this up since it's just a basic project, but now it's actually using this particular one. Now, if I come back over here, you'll notice I've got post 1 and post 2. Post 1 works, but post 2 does not have that wrapper. So let's go ahead and add that layout front matter item as well. And now that has it as well. Now let's say that I wanted to have a little back button right here. The way I currently have this set up, since it's just using my base layout, I don't really have a back button here, so it's not going to actually show here. So what I could do is create another one. So let's go ahead and do that. This is what I typically do if I'm using Markdown files like this, which now that I use content collections almost exclusively doesn't really happen, but I want to show you how you can. So let's come in here to base layout. We're going to call this like blog wrapper.astro. Now we're going to do the exact same thing, except in this case, what I want to do is grab the base layout like this, and we're going to drop a slot directly inside of here. So it's essentially a slot inside of a slot. So I can use this, let's get rid of this right here. So I can use this one, this blog wrapper, instead of the base layout, and then I can create custom items just for those pages. So if I come back over to my different posts, where are we at right here? Post 1 and post 2, I'm just going to change this to blog wrapper.astro. Let's copy this, and we'll do the same thing here, blog wrapper.astro. Now it should look the exact same if I come inside here, but now I can actually add a little back button or anything I want particular just to the blog itself. So let's go ahead and above this slot here, I'm going to add an anchor link, and this will just take me back home. We'll say like back home. All right, now notice it says back home right here. I can click here in either of these. Now this blog wrapper component is actually adding this extra item here. Then the content of the actual blog goes right here. Now, like I mentioned, you get a lot of different items when you import some Markdown. So let's go ahead and just import a single one, and I can do that. We'll just call it post 1, and let's just grab post 1.md. And then I'll console log this down below. And if I scroll down, you'll notice we get all those same items we expect. Let's grab just though the front matter like this. And notice here, you'll see I get title and I also get the layout because those are the items in post 1's front matter. Now we can do that with any of these items. So I've got the URL, we've already seen that. Let's look at the raw content. Notice this is a function that returns to us the raw content of the post. So if I wanted to, I could actually grab this and just drop it in directly here. Notice it's the raw content that's just been returned exactly as I wrote it in that file. Now, what if you actually want the HTML, but you don't want it as a component? Well, that's where the compiled content comes in. So the compiled content gives me the HTML, but not as a component, just as a string of HTML. Now, there's one other thing I want to look at, and that is the get headings. So let's say get headings like this, and then I just want to get all these items back. And once I have them back, let's console log them. It gives me the exact slug, so it slugifies all my headings for me automatically, the text as well, the depth it's at. In other words, it's an H2, not an H3 or an H1. It gives me all those dynamically, so I can link to them or use remark plugins as I want to. So you got a lot of options here that all come by default when you use Astro. That all come by default when you're using Markdown within Astro. So whether you're importing individual Markdown components, looping over files, grabbing individual files, picking off front matter, grabbing the headings, all of this comes baked in by default in Astro. Well, I hope you can see some of the power of using Markdown within Astro. This is just a sampling of what you can do, but it shows you just one more little hint of how powerful Astro is with content sites. If you're interested in learning more about Astro, check out my full course linked below.